Hi, welcome to the Morning Mercy podcast. My name is James, the creator of the website Morning Mercy, which is dedicated to helping people who are leaving the teaching of William Branham to find a healthier path on the way to a new future. If you are somebody who is from a performance-based religion, not necessarily my own, you may resonate with the things that I'm going to talk about, because universally, if you belong to a very structured, performance-based religion with a very strong leadership and a very structured form of rules that you must abide by in order to belong to the group, if you ever get to a point where you question and have legitimate reason to walk away and you go through that experience, it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of confusion, a lot of emotion, a lot of trauma that comes up. It's not just a walking away, it's a tearing away. Because like myself, it's so intertwined with who I was, how I thought, how I lived. Every aspect of me was connected. My identity to the core of who I was. And so that's why I'm making this podcast. It's to speak to the issues that you may be going through. Starts off the same way for most of us. You just open the door and you take those first steps out. You have no idea where you're going. You don't know what's up, what's down. You don't know how you feel. You just know that you're feeling all of it and it hurts. When you walk out for the first time, you're walking through doors out of a place that was so defined, that was so structured, that was so programmed, and everybody inside of it knew exactly their role that they played in the performance that everybody is expected to play. And that's why I refer to it as performance-based religion. It's a part of civilization, in a sense, that in order for there to be a functioning society, to be civil within society, you need to have some form of structure so that we know how to behave in an acceptable way to each other. That's where our legal system comes into play. Like, I know that my behavior towards you should be that I'm not going to hurt you, harm you, cause violence to you. I'm not going to take your things. I'm not going to steal. These are expected behaviors that if we all abide by these rules, then we protect each other from wrongdoing. So within the group that we belong to as a message church, to belong to that church, we had a civil code that we all followed. In our group, we called it like church order. There was an order to things. And so in a sense, it's not wrong to have that. But it's also what makes us comfortable to belong. It's because when I walked into the doors of, say, the church, I knew that the men were going to do a certain thing, that the women were going to do a certain thing, that they were going to, each gender was going to dress in a particular way that was acceptable and safe. And if everybody followed by that, there was no surprises. Everybody was safe because these are the rules. And if we all follow the rules, then it's all good. And, the way we spoke to each other, the way that children behaved, the way that we walked into the congregation into the sanctuary, and the way the songs were played, the way they were sung, the way we worshiped, the way that we had a way of sitting before the sermon began or before the singing began. There was an order to everything, and all of those things were so familiar to us. And that we had our place in the stage of this community. And if we performed our role, then we belonged. And everybody belonged. And it was just the way we did life at church. Now, it just so happened that belonging to the group, there were a whole lot more rules than you would find outside of our church. And that's what made our faith group what it was. This is what it meant to be holy. This is what it meant to be good. This is what it meant to be accepted to God, to the pastor, to the deacons, to our family, to the community around us. To be accepted was to perform. And then God would love us, and our pastor would love us, and the deacons would love us, and no one gets in trouble, and we're safe. And we can stay. Now, for us who are ex-followers of William Branham, we came to a conclusion that there were problems. And these problems were legitimately found as we were beginning to question some of the reasons why we believed the way that we did. We had a lot of faith in the leadership, in our pastors, in the teaching, in the theology, and that God delivered a message to a man named William Branham who we followed and we gave our life to. And our pastor, he spoke from the teachings of William Branham. So we had a contract with all of these components, all of these people. We had a contract that we agreed and we believed. And the contract said, because we believed, then we obey. Then we obey and we belong. And now that we begin to realize that maybe the contract, it's not us breaking the contract, but the promises that were given to us, that all these things were true. Now, these things appear to be broken. Now, suddenly, the reasons why I'm obeying the rules according to the contract of faith was that I'm doing this because it's true, because this is how we're supposed to be, and this is how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, because what we're hearing is true. Now, if the thing that we're hearing isn't true, now we begin to question, and now we begin to move away. And then when we walked out those doors, like I described, we're now outside of this safe bubble, and we're walking away. Now, physically, we're walking away. I remember the day I walked out of church and I climbed into my car with my wife and my kids. And we knew we weren't going to go back. There's a lot of feelings that come with that, like overwhelming feelings. Because what does that now mean? For us, for the community that we belong to, it was as though we broke the faith contract. We were no longer guaranteed protection and security and safety. And we were going to be in the palm of his hand. And now, because we were walking away, there's feelings, fears, all of this now is introduced to us. The church would tell us the reason you're feeling afraid is because you know that you're breaking faith with God. And the way to fix it is to come back. But now you're walking away. And now what do you do? This is what I want to talk about. It's just giving yourself permission. And it's really one of the biggest things that I know I speak of when I talk to anybody who's going down the same path. Because it does feel so unsafe, and it feels reckless, and it feels wild, and it feels like it's like you're now in a vehicle driving away and you have no idea if the brakes work anymore. You're just driving, and you might die. Any moment you might die. You might mess up. You might make a mistake. You might say the wrong thing. You might now be susceptible to bad influences. In the last podcast episode, I talked about giving yourself time to find answers, because you don't know the answers right away. But here's the other thing is too, it's giving yourself permission. So like I said, you're going to feel things when you come out. You're going to feel fear. So fear is a signal that that you need to get back to safety. I mean, the mechanism of fear is there for your protection, right? You feel afraid because your life is at risk, because you're at risk, because whatever it is that made you safe is not there anymore, and now you're in jeopardy. So you feel fear. And the tendency is to want to get back to safety. But here's giving yourself permission. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid. Give yourself permission, because once you understand why you're feeling afraid, it's for the reasons that I just outlined. It was safe in this bubble. It was all safe and protected. You knew how to perform, and you know that if you performed, you were safe. You're in the palm of God's hand. The pastor wasn't going to get mad at you. The deacons weren't going to get mad at you. No one's going to get mad at you. You're safe and secure and protected and comfortable. And the reason you're feeling afraid is because now you're performing a different role according to what you were taught. You're no longer performing the way that they want you to and the way that you've been taught. Performance-based religion expects that of you. But now you're breaking character. You're standing on the front of the stage and you're saying, I'm not sure of the script anymore. Yeah, I'm breaking from the performance. I'm now going to speak some different lines. You have to give yourself permission to do that. So here's what some of the things that you might need to give yourself permission to do. It's to be human. It's to come back to being human. Because in the message, you were expected to be a little mini God. You were expected to perform to a high standard. That sounds really good. But again, you're performing the standard. You're performing to a standard spoken by a man that you now question. Is everything that he said bad? No. But now you're going and you're doing something where the lines are no longer defined as clearly. So give yourself permission to be human. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. But at the moment, it's going to feel like everything you do is a mistake. Like if I don't go back to church because I'm supposed to go to church every Sunday, maybe twice on Sundays, I'm supposed to go on Wednesday. Now, it's going to feel like, am I making a mistake by not showing up? Or you might not even know which church to go to from this point. And that might feel like a mistake. It might feel like a mistake if you just make a random decision that I'm going to try this church. I don't know I look at the outside of the church, it says it's a whatever the label is on the church, you might feel like, oh, am I going to make a mistake? Okay. Give yourself permission to make a mistake. Allow yourself to even make lots of mistakes. And what you define as a mistake is probably going to shift. It's because you've been given the list of do's and don'ts, and they were very specific. So soon what you're going to realize is some of the things that you were messing up on, you weren't actually messing up on. You just need to have a bit of a shift, and you have to give yourself permission to walk in that unknown ground to admit, I don't know. You're going to maybe make a decision to not know what church to go to. So here, something else to give yourself permission is to take a time out from church attendance. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to perform. You're allowed to break from performance. And maybe you don't go to church next Sunday. And maybe you don't go to church for the next while. And maybe you find out what that's like to break from performing that law that was given to you that you have to walk through the church doors as soon as they're open. Maybe that was just a law. Maybe that's not necessary. Maybe there's a different picture that you'll learn about that. Give yourself permission to have emotion. Yes, you're afraid. Yes, you feel like crying. That doesn't mean you're weak because you feel like crying. Yes, you feel anger. You're allowed to feel anger. Go ahead and feel anger. Give yourself permission to do that. Yes, you're allowed to be afraid. Give yourself permission to be afraid. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're going through a big transition and you're human and you're going to feel lots and lots of emotion. So give yourself permission to be sad, angry, afraid, confused. Also give yourself permission to be curious. Allow yourself to think. Allow yourself to ask even more questions than you asked before. If you need help, hey, give yourself permission to ask for help. And if you need to be alone, give yourself permission to be alone. You're allowed to take time. Give yourself permission to take time and lots of it. Whether you need to think, whether you need to pray, whether you just need time away from everything because everything feels like it's too much. It's okay to give yourself permission for time so that you could come up with new questions and that you could also take time to learn what the answers might be. Give yourself permission to change, to grow. You know why? It's because you're allowed. It's because you're allowed. It's because you're allowed. And see, this is where if somebody comes back into your life and begins to demand that you get back in line and demand that you go back into the performance that you've been giving all these years according to the script that was given to you many years ago when you first started coming to church and you were told how to act, how to think, how to speak, how to stand, how to sit, when to stand, how to come, how to go, how to belong, how to be accepted. There's a script that you've been given. So if somebody comes back demanding that you step back into that performance, you're allowed to say no. Give yourself permission to say that. What you're going to find as you're going through all of this is you're going to learn things by giving yourself permission. You're going to feel things. So what I recommend is picking up some paper, grab a pen, and start to journal that journey that you go through. Because what you're going to find is day 1, day 2, day 3, day 10, day 20, you're going to have a lot of feelings and thoughts. Month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, year 1, year 2, year 3, you're going to find that there's a lot of change and a lot of growth and a lot of learning. And what you felt like you're never going to get away from in those early days, you're going to find yourself a year later looking back and thinking, oh, man, I've come a long ways. Man, my thinking has changed a lot. You're going to find some things in you that haven't changed, and you're going to find some things that are way different. And a lot of this is going to come just by giving yourself that permission to go through the process of the learning and the healing and the growing and the feeling and the crying and the experiencing and the discovering. All of it is part of the process. You have to give yourself permission to go through that. You're never going to just leave and know exactly where you're going to end up. So document some of the things that you learn. I, for myself, documented a lot of things. There's a lot of things I learned really quickly. I learned that it felt really good to not be around message people for the first while. I didn't want to have conversations that went too deep when I didn't have answers. By giving myself permission to not be around message people. Later in life, I didn't mind. I didn't mind being around. I didn't feel a whole lot of emotion anymore. But I was also fine to say no to some people and to say yes to other people. It took me a while to give myself permission to say that William Branham was a false prophet. You need to give yourself permission to do that when you feel ready. It's not me telling you to do that. It's you going through a process of figuring out, was he? Wasn't he? Was this good? Was this bad? Was this true? Was this false? I'm not dictating that to you. You need to find that out, but you also need to give yourself permission to ask questions so that you can find that out and find the answer to that. I know for myself, giving myself permission to go through that exploration, it took away the fear. And once I began to recognize how I thought, it more or less set me free so that I could more honestly look at other things. But I did it at my own pace and at my own decision, based on my own study. I also found that I had to give myself permission to feel the feelings that I felt, because there was other people around me that were extremely angry when they first left. And they had their own journey and their own reasons for feeling just heavy anger. I couldn't feed off of that. It didn't do me good. So I had to give myself permission to have my own experience so that I wasn't bitter or angry. And if I did feel angry, I had to give myself permission to explore why. What was it that was triggering my own anger? And how was it that I was going to heal? I had to give myself permission to dream again, because there was a point in my life when I had certain dreams. And I let those dreams go the more I became immersed in the church and giving myself away to the mandate and to the performance that I was expected to perform in the church. I lost my script. I took on a different script. And I began to dream again. And I had feelings and thoughts that I never had before. And I gave myself permission to just kind of let my dreams come alive again in me. See, the act of giving yourself permission is just opening the doors and saying, hey, you left. So go take the journey. Go take that journey. Go open new doors. Don't feel shame and guilt for the journey you're about to go on. And if you're feeling shame and guilt, well, you have permission to explore why that is. The game of permission, time and permission, they're very important for those early days. Because you're so not used to being on your own, to thinking your own thoughts, to being allowed to do these things. So that's really all I want to say is, hey, give yourself permission. This is not me telling you. I can't make you do anything. Nobody can make you do anything. Nobody should be able to make you do anything. You have permission. Give yourself permission. I hope you find that as you go through the journey that you're on, that you find comfort and courage and peace and grace to grow into the transition that you're going to go through. The less pressure that it's a hard journey. It's a really hard journey, and I acknowledge that. And I admire anybody who's taking those first steps, because it is no simple thing to question the kind of teaching that you've been given. You know the risks involved. And so I just want to say strength and courage to you. I hope this podcast episode was in some way helpful, and that the next steps in your journey will be ones that benefit and make you feel like there's hope for the future ahead. Thanks for listening. My name is James. This is Morning Mercy. If you have any particular subject that you'd like me to speak on, by all means, leave it in the comments. I'd love to address things as relevant to whoever's listening might want to have more information about. I'm just here to help. Thank you for listening. Take care.